Hey, did you know that about two-thirds of the cost of college goes towards things other than tuition and fees? In fact, about 43% of it go to room and board alone. Today, we're going to talk about how you can use a 529 plan to help pay for costs other than tuition and fees. Specifically, we're going to talk about paying for room and board. Stick around till the end, and I'll give you some tips on how to maximize the use of your 529. We all know that the cost of college has gone up drastically in the last couple of decades, and room and board has been a big part of that. In 1990, room and board on average was $7,500 for a year. In 2022, it was $12,640. That's a 69% increase. Today, we're going to talk about how you can use a 529 plan to pay for room and board as a qualified expense. Now, the one is pretty simple. Room and board refers to your living expenses and your food. Now, let's talk about who qualifies to use 529 plans as a qualified distribution to pay for room and board. In order to qualify to use 529 plan as a qualified distribution, pay for room and board, you need to meet two criteria. One, you have to be enrolled at least half time during that semester. This means that if you're only going to school during the fall and spring semesters, you can't use a 529 plan to pay for your rent during the summer months and use that as a qualified education distribution. The second important criteria to keep in mind is that each school has its own cap on room and board costs. You can find this as part of the college's stated cost of attendance numbers. Let's take a second and I can show you how to find the cost of attendance numbers at a couple different schools. We'll start by putting in the name of the university with cost of attendance after it. So for this, we'll look at Texas A&M, cost of attendance. And if you see cost of attendance calculator pop up on your search, go ahead and use that one. So we can see here, tuition calculator, net price calculator, or cost of attendance rates. Any one of these should get us the information. So we're going to go to cost of attendance information. And here, A&M has a page where it tells you about how you can figure out what the cost of attendance is, what all's included. But what we want is this tuition calculator. So here you can see the different settings that are available to you. This is a good place to go if you're looking at different schools and want to figure out how much the school is going to cost. The tuition calculator is what you're looking for. So what we care about for housing, room and board is this housing and food number. So for A&M, if you are a incoming freshman this year that's a Texas resident living on campus, you can see that your housing and food is capped at $6,577. And that is for both the fall and spring semester combined. If you're wanting to know what the summer semester is going to look like, you can click on that and you see that's $2,900. Now, important thing to note is it does matter where you live. So currently we have it set to on campus. So now let's look at off campus. You can see A&M's numbers drop. So it's actually cheaper to live off campus, or at least in their cost of attendance numbers, they estimate that it's going to be cheaper to live off campus. That also means that if you're living off of campus, you have a smaller number that you can take out of that 529 plan and it count as room and board for a qualified expense. What if my kid's going to a town, or what if my kid's going to a school in town where we live? So at home with parents, you can see that housing and food number drops drastic. So yes, you may be able to save money by having your kid stay with you and live at home while they're going to school, but it's going to reduce how much you can pull out of the 529 plan to pay for room and board. Now that may or may not be a consideration for you, but it is something to keep in mind. So these are A&M's numbers. Let's go back and look at Southern Methodist. So I'm in the DFW Dallas area. So SMU is one of the universities we have here. It's a private school. Let's go for cost of attendance calculator. Okay, so here, when you throw in SMU cost of attendance calculator, you can see it's the second option. So we're going to click that. So it gives you a couple different options. You can pick what semester you're talking about. Looks like they haven't updated it for the fall of 24 yet, which is strange because that semester starts here in a couple weeks. Well, let's go ahead and look at their undergraduate numbers. This is going to be your estimate. Housing cost info. So you can see here, fall, spring, graduate housing. So this is where you can get those numbers for SMU. And it's going to be a similar process for any school. So let's do one more. Since I'm in the DFW, OU is another big school that a lot of families are interested in. So let's look at their cost of attendance numbers. So undergraduate, let's assume that they're in the Dallas areas where they live. So they're going to go to OU. So that would be a non-resident for Oklahoma. And then here's reading those numbers. So housing and food, looks like that would be a little over $15,000 a year. And then you can get that whole breakdown, housing, food. That's the best way to find the cost of attendance numbers. Keep in mind, they're specific to each school and they do change year to year. Now, I mentioned how room and board costs can vary across different universities and how the cap is set per university. But I also want to talk about how the actual cost that you pay can vary greatly within a university itself, depending on the decisions you make. So let's take a look at Texas A&M and just on-campus living. So this is a student that's living on campus. They're not getting an apartment out in town. So what do those prices look like? Well, for next year, or for this current year, you can see the prices are as high as almost $7,000 for the most expensive of the dorms having a single occupancy. It's a little bit less for a double occupancy, but it's not half. And then let's flip it around and look at the cheapest. Here at Hard Hall, if you do a double occupancy, you're at $2,400. And that's per semester. So it could be as high as $7,000 a semester, or you can look at a place like Hart Hall with the ramp dorm, double room. You're looking at $2,400 a semester. So, right, $4,800. So huge difference depending on where you choose to live. And this is all on the same campus. So now let's talk about how you actually use a 529 plan to pay for room and board. There's a couple different options. The most straightforward, if your student is living on campus in the dorms and is using a meal plan, then 529 plan can send the funds directly to the university to pay for the room and board costs. Or you can go ahead and pay for those costs out of pocket and then be reimbursed by the 529 plan. The third option, if your student is living off campus, you want to make sure that you track your rent payments, document that, and also keep the receipts for when they go get groceries. Now, when we talk about keeping receipts, keep in mind there is a cap on how much your school will let you use as room and board fees. So if you've already gone past the annual cap using just the rent, then I wouldn't worry too much about tracking every grocery receipt. Now, the big tip here to make sure that you're maximizing the use of that 529 plan, make sure that you use the withdrawals and distributions from the 529 plan in the year that the expenses occurred. So if you pay for rent or dorm rooms ahead of time in December for that January spring semester, make sure that you claim it for the 2024. And that's how to use a 529 plan to help cover costs other than tuition, like your room and board. For more tips on college planning, how to save money on college, and how to leverage 529 plans and other strategies, check out our other videos.